Welcome back, everyone. Now that we understand how Create React App has helped us scaffold out our project, let's actually go about building our project. There's a couple things that I want you to really focus in on while we go through these lessons, especially throughout this course, because I think that this is probably the main thing you want to focus on when it comes to learning React as a concept, beyond just learning how to actually write the code that React presents itself with. And this concept is the idea of rendering. In my opinion, what makes a great React developer from a good React developer is a great React developer really understands when React is rendering and re-rendering your website. This is one of the most core and essential things to understand with React, because that's really all React does. Earlier, Andre mentioned that when we're writing React, we are going to write things in either class components or functional components with hooks. Functional components with hooks is the modern way that we do a lot of things in React, even though many companies use a mix of classes and functional components. And if this doesn't make sense right now, don't worry about it. The reason why you don't need to worry about it is because it's really just syntax and different ways to do kind of the same thing, which is tell React when you want it to render and re-render different parts of your website. And I'm really going to hone in on this throughout this course. But this is what I really want you to focus on, is understanding when React renders and re-renders parts of your website. Because that's really all React does as a framework. So in order for us to begin on this, let's first take a look at our project. So as I mentioned in our package.json, Create React App gave us this start script that lets us start the base project that it scaffolded for us. So in case you haven't done it again, let's just quickly do it. Let's go back to our terminal and let's run yarn start, which is the script that will start up our React server that will then host our website. So here we're going to localhost 3000, which is where our website is going to be hosted. So let's just wait for this to load. And now we see it. This is the base project that Create React App has given us. So what you saw here is that this website was loading and waiting for React to render something onto the page. In this case, we have this spinning logo, we have this text, and then we have this link to learn more about React. It links to the React docs. But what happened here was that this page was rendered. These different things that you see were all rendered. All you need to understand about rendering is pretty much putting some UI, which is some HTML, some CSS, or some JavaScript onto the page that a user can then interact with and see. So something is done rendering the moment that they can interact with it. It's on the page. That's the idea of rendering. So let's go back to our code here and let's go into app.js. As I mentioned when we were walking through our Create React app, it generated this file for us, app.js, and inside is a function app. And this function returns some HTML when you look at this. The reason why you can read this as HTML and JavaScript is able to render this is because of the fact that this is written in JSX. So JSX is really just a syntax extension of JavaScript. Now you might be wondering, whoa, syntax extension, what does that mean? All it really means is that they've taken JavaScript and they've added more functionality to it. They've extended its functionality. And what it really works is that it allows you to write what looks like HTML inside of your JavaScript. So this looks like HTML, but it's not HTML. But it really closely resembles HTML. And that's really the most important thing. The reason why is because React decided that a lot of what you want to render visually, now, the visual representation, of course, is HTML. As we know, HTML encaptures what we want to put onto the web page. It doesn't actually extend any of the functionality. Remember, the functionality is the JavaScript. The behavior is the JavaScript. The HTML just determines what you want to see. React has decided that that thing that you want to see, the UI component, is very closely tied to how you want the UI to behave. So we'll learn a lot more about that throughout the course, and you'll really understand that idea. But what you really want to focus on here with JSX is that it makes it much easier for us to tell our JavaScript code, i.e. our function, what we want it to visually render to the page. JSX is really just a more efficient way for us to tell our React code or our JavaScript extended code what we want to render. In this particular case, this function app is a functional component that renders through its return statement this block of HTML or HTML like JavaScript. So we'll dive into this a lot more, but again, what I want you to focus on is that this has to do with the rendering. We're telling this function what we want it to render, and the JSX just makes it easier for us to tell this functional app what we want it to render. So writing a functional component is one way to render something to the page. It's one way of telling React what our component should do. Another way, though, is using a class component. And a class component is where I want us to start. As I mentioned before, class components do pretty much the same thing functional components do, just in a slightly different way. But they all do the same thing, functional components and class components. It allows us to tell React what we expect this component to render and how we expect it to render things. And I want to start with a class component over a functional component because a class component is easier to understand this idea of when React will render and re-render things. And I'm going to show you how. So what we're going to first do is just convert this into a class component. In order to do that, we actually need to import component from React. And this is something that is a class that React gives us so that it allows all of the new components that we write in a class component format to get access to some of the functionality that by default React has already built for us inside of this component class. So to convert it, I'm going to say class app extends component. So here I'm saying, hey, I want you to make this class called app, and I want you to extend the functionality of this component class that React has given us. And what we need to change here is that React has also created on this component class a render method. So this already exists, but what we're passing to it is this return. And inside of this return is going to be, again, the JSX or HTML representation of what you want this component to give back. And that's it. This will pretty much be the exact same thing as that previous app function that we had. So if we go back to our browser, we'll see that our web page is the exact same. Everything is still working. If we open up our console, we see that we have no errors. So here we understand, okay, this functional component that we had before is pretty much the exact same now as this class component. They're still rendering the same thing. In fact, it's just that here, React is explicitly telling us, oh, this is what you are rendering. So that is why I think it's more helpful already. We're already seeing, oh, I'm already explicitly telling my component what I want it to render. And therefore React knows, oh, what do I want to render? Whatever is returned from my render method. So in this lesson, we learned that there are functional components and class components that both pretty much just tell React that with this component, what do I want you to render? In the next video, we're going to learn about some additional things that we can do that we can jump in and modify both what we're rendering and how we want things to be re-rendered. And that will really help us be able to actually begin to modify our website to be more like an app. And we're going to see that in the next video. So I'll see you there.